I have long admired your gallery and your curation skills, and so I'm really honored to have shown here. So thank you so much. And thank you for being here to hear us. So I'm Becca. I grew up here, and I have always been into art, but I kind of did, after high school, college, I did a psychology degree in college and kind of gave up making art for a period of time. I was more interested in like dating and studying. I don't know. so I didn't make art for a period of time. Then I got married, and then I had kids, and our kids are now teenagers. But when my youngest, who's 14, was tiny, I decided I needed creativity and art making back in my life. So that was about 14, maybe 13 years ago. She's 14. And then after kind of trying a bunch of different mediums and experimenting and learning different things, I ended up falling in love with abstraction and have been committed to that for about 10 years. So kind of on a part-time basis, essentially, just because parenting and life and everything is just, but it's been an amazing thing to have in my life. And I find myself constantly interested in abstraction and find it compelling consistently. So I just keep doing it. And I like to do non-objective abstraction, which means that I don't have anything I'm trying to specifically say or specifically create image-wise. And I really love the idea of non-objective abstraction because I feel like I highly value self-discovery. And I want you as the viewer to be able to have your own discovery with the painting and not have me telling you what to look at or telling you what to see. I want you to see what you see based on who you are as an individual. So, but at the same time, as a person who is making the art, I find a lot of enrichment and benefit to myself to like infuse meaning into it personally. So, and because you're here tonight, I'll just share some of that with you. Otherwise, I wouldn't, I wouldn't like be standing next to a painting typically on like a first Friday and say like, I was thinking this when I painted this. Like, I want you to just experience it for yourself. So, but it's not as fun to like do an artist talk if you don't share some of like the inner work around the creation. Um, so I find that I'm always inspired by the internal and the invisible, the things that don't have language or that are harder to put language to, which abstraction is that. But just even when it comes to understanding how we are like processing the invisible things in life, like maybe the invisible things inside of us that we can't see, or the invisible things outside of us that we can't see, like spirituality or even our own biology, I think is like the internal things that we can't see, but we are feeling every day. So I just like to think about those things and ponder and meditate on those things. And so for this exhibit, so with every exhibit, I will come up with a theme that I'm currently interested in, and then kind of immerse myself in that theme while during the course of the time that I'm making the art for that exhibit. So for this one, I called it Sites of Transformation. And I love the idea of transformation. I love the idea that like culturally forever as humans, we've been interested in transformation. So I've considered where does transformation show up in like mythology? Where does it show up in how we live our lives as far as like what do we currently write about, like self-help books and stuff like that? Like how do we think about transformation on a big scale, but then also how do I think about transformation on my very personal specific level, which is for me just the specifics of where I'm at. I'm just like a white middle-aged woman with husband and children, and I'm I've kind of walked through like puberty with two of my favorite people, and I'm like facing menopause, and that feels, there's a lot of unknown in that. There's a lot of the invisible in those transformations, like where these things just happen in your body, and you have no control over those things, you know. So so basically, I will read and think and meditate and ponder, and then approach the painting where, like on an intuitive level, like where I will shut all those thoughts off and then paint and try to make all of the choices with the painting, like what colors I choose, what tools I use, that kind of thing, on a very, very intuitive level without putting too much thought into it. So whatever colors I'm gravitating toward that time, I will just like let myself choose those colors and try not to overthink it. And then same with the flow of putting the paint on the panel or canvas. I try to not overthink it, but just be intuitive about it. And then after the fact, after I feel like the painting's done, sometimes the painting and the end result will speak to me about the theme. Not all the time, but sometimes it'll speak back to me about that theme of transformation. And then I find that really fulfilling and exciting, kind of like this like mysterious dynamic. So you know, I wouldn't necessarily like, I'm not going to say like this painting means this and this means that and that means that, but it's like, I guess it's that kind of fascinating human experience of like trusting your intuition and then seeing what comes out of that. So um, some about my process. I like to start pretty, I would say like 98% of the time I start with an underpainting. So I will start with, for this exhibit specifically, a lot of them I did like a watered down acrylic paint and made like kind of a wash, kind of washes in different acrylic colors. And then I'll kind of let it live by itself for a little while and observe it for a period of time, however long, and then go in on the top of that layer with oil paint. This is specific to this exhibit, but I'm kind of thinking I might do this for a while, kind of like the starting with an acrylic base and then going in with oil on top. So this, I'll just kind of start adding colors, and then as I'm painting and as I'm moving paint around and like blending and um, using palette knives or brushes, the intuition lasts to a certain point, and then I start thinking along the lines of like elements of composition and considering how is the composition taking shape, especially if it's starting to look interesting to me and starting to feel like, oh, this could be maybe close to being finished, or like maybe some kind of form is taking shape. I'll start to sort of like loosely ask questions of myself, like, so the elements of composition, some of them are movement, which movement's a big one for me. I like to have a lot of movement in my paintings. Line, I love line, so I'll usually have some kind of like scribbly line situation with like a pastel, like oil pastel. And then shape, form, texture. Texture is really important to me, and I love the oil paint for that. Actually, I love the watery kind of texture with the acrylic, and then the oil paint just straight out of the tube sometimes just has this like nice heavy body to it. And then when the brush kind of like carves through it, I just love like the heavy brush stroke. And then I love how a palette knife can like really smooth things out. And so I kind of like to have a variety of texture to where it's not all like heavy, but some of it's smooth and gentle, but then there's kind of this play between thick texture and very smooth surfaces and that kind of thing. And then um, color, of course, is a part of it, but to me, color is almost secondary, tertiary to like texture and line and form. So I would say I feel like a composition is complete when it has sort of kind of a organic shape to it that does not look like anything. I don't want it to look like anything specific. This maybe looks a little too flowery for my preferences usually, but I loved it. I loved the kind of like chaotic unfolding kind of feel that it had to it, so I let it be a flower. I mean, I don't know if you see a flower, but I see a flower. um, so, um, so anyway, I am going to leave it at that and then just open up to questions if anybody has questions. That's a great question. And I love the idea of having like a critique group where you can send each other photos and get feedback. But I haven't formalized that for myself yet. It's kind of like on my to do maybe in a couple years kind of thing. I think mainly because I still feel relatively new to finding my own voice with abstraction. And so to me, I almost need no extra voices playing, like um, adding to what I'm doing because I need to learn how to trust my own voice and not, I think because I maybe have a tendency to like doubt my voice or maybe not be confident in that. And so to me, I feel like I've been working on getting to a point where I think when I'm really solidly trusting my voice and kind of like feel like I have some more solidity there, then I think that'll be like a good time to bring in like my trusted collaborators to be like, here's this, what do you think? Like, and then, does that make sense? Yeah. So I'm more of a thinker than a feeler, and it's hard for me to get in touch too much with the feeling. So I'm not directly like having a feeling and putting it on the canvas, but then a lot of times I'll see the feeling in the work afterwards and be like, I must have been feeling like with this exhibit. I feel like there was a lot of like energy, like emotional energy there. But what I liked about Bernice Bing is she has this. I actually have never seen a ton of her work, but I just immediately connected with it when I saw it. And she just has, I feel like the way she composes her work is kind of similar to what I'm always kind of aiming for, you know. And then Helen Frankenthaler, I listed, everybody loves her. Like she's kind of like the classic like abstract expressionist that everybody's like, we love Helen Frankenthaler. But I really do I love the watery kind of aspect that she uses in a lot of her work. And then um, Lee Krasner was the other one. And I also, even though my work isn't necessarily like Lee Krasner's per se, or Helen's, or even Bernice's, I really enjoyed learning about their stories through different books and that kind of thing. And then I like that whole movement of abstract expressionism and the time that they were painting. And so I'm inspired by who they were in that time and how they were working and how they were pushing themselves to work in this like very misogynistic environment and like pushing to keep moving forward with their own expressions. So lately I went on like a binge listen of this guy. I don't know his real name actually, so I'm not very committed to him, but I like was very binge listening to Novo Amor. Have you heard of him? Okay. Yeah, he kind of does this like falsetto thing, but I love the instrumentals of it. He's kind of like indie guy. Well, thank you all so much for listening and for being here. Thanks.